All right, Brett Okamoto with ESPN here, checking in on the quarantined Felice Herrig. Where are you quarantined at in the world today, Felice?
I'm quarantined right outside of Chicago. It's a suburb, Crystal Lake, but I always just say Chicago because people know that, and it sounds cooler. People like being a part of like those big cities like Chicago and New York. So Chicago. Basically.
Chicago's cool. Say Chicago. Yeah.
Chicago. Yeah. People always say that I have a like really strong Chicago accent. I guess I do. Maybe. I don't know. I think I just talk funny.
I can hear the Chicago accent. It's pretty strong. And you're living with a giant cat. Are you one of those big cat owners?
The tiger? Oh, no. We're talking about the Tiger King. Those people are weird, as I've just come to realize.
I mean, in the Zoom picture, that looks like a mountain lion of some sort. What do we got? What is that there?
She thinks she's a mountain lion. She's just a tabby. She's just a rescued cat. I had her since she was a kitten, like 12 weeks old. She's my therapy cat. She brought me a mouse right now as like a present. I love waking like with these in my bed, knowing that she brought me a little something at night while I was sleeping.
We're talking fake mouse. Yeah, like fake mouse, stuffed mouse.
I do have a real mouse too, 2 of them. That's actually a funny story.
Like in a cage somewhere?
Yeah, in a cage next to a snake. My boyfriend has a snake and it wouldn't eat the mouse. And this is the first time I actually watched him like try to feed it, and like he was like dangling it, and I felt so bad for the mouse. I thought he was so cute, and it like 3 days the snake didn't eat it, so he's like, I'm just gonna put him outside. And I was like, no, but you can't. And he's like, so he did, and it was raining outside, and then he came home like hours later after work, and he's like, you're not going to believe it. The mouse is still where I left him, just staring at the brick. I'm like, well, then he's ours. We have to have him. And I did this like elaborate thing. And so he's a feeder mouse. So I've had him for over a year now. I got him right around my injury. And he's like, he itches himself raw, like blood, like scabs. I thought his head was going to be decapitated. I was like, he's only going to live like a couple days. And then he like made a miracle. Like he came back and he started growing fur again, hair. And then it happened again. I'm like, oh, he's going now. He just keeps coming back. Even when I was in Vegas a couple of months ago, my boyfriend's sister was watching the cat and the mouse. And she was like, oh, I got bad news for you. Shawnee's dead. And she went back. She didn't want to. She let her mom come because she was afraid to touch it or whatever. And it just like came back to life. He's come back to life like 5 times. And I say he's recovering with me. He's not gonna die until my knee's all better.
Felice, I got to say, you're kind of coming across as a crazy cat lady right now.
I'm not. She like never gives me this look. Like, well, she's so.
And I thought, what do you mean? So I thought that if like you had feeder mice and you had a snake, I didn't know that if you put it in the box and the snake didn't eat it, that means that you took it out. I thought you just left it in there until the snake ate it.
No, because sometimes it'll be like weeks or even months before they eat it. Snakes can go like a whole year without eating, and a lot of times like this happened to my dad. My dad had snakes when I was young, all kinds of reptiles. The mouse can scratch the snake.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. And feeder mice are like born and bred to just be feeder mice, so they have all kinds of problems. Because when the mouse was having all like literally, if you saw a picture, I have a picture. He looked like his head was going to be decapitated. There were blood splatters all over his cage. It was so gross. But I called the vet. They were like, I was like, what can I do? They're like, it's a feeder mouse. They're born born and bred just to be food, and they have all kinds of problems. I don't know what's up with her today. She wants all the attention. That's what it is. She always wants like all the attention. But look, this is why, cats get a bad rap. Look how cute and loving she is.
Well, some cats are cool, but I feel like the cats that are cool are the ones that act like dogs, like the ones that will come and want to be pet and want to sit in your lap and things like that.
Yeah.
Most cats are like super independent and they're just like a third roommate or something. Like they're not actually like your friends. I feel like I'm
Yeah.
I'm a dog person all the
Oh,
way.
you're one of those people. Okay. Well, she is my friend and she's like a dog.
She seems
Do you hear
nice.
what Brett says to you? Oh, I knew it. This is what she does when I draw. She just plops on my drawing and thinks that like she's running the show now. Okay, Quinn, now I gotta move the camera. Oh, get a good look at your face first. Anyways, we're back.
All right. Well, that's all the time we have. Great interview. It was great catching up with you, Felice. I think we learned all the important stuff.
Yeah. Crazy animal lady.
So tell us what's going on, because I actually saw you in Vegas and you were out here. So you tore your ACL prior to a fight. It's supposed to be a UFC 238 in your hometown of Chicago.
Yeah.
And so typically, ACL injuries, we tend to think, 6 months to 9 months, and we should be seeing some real progress and maybe, you booking a fight again. And we haven't seen that from you. So give us an update on what your status is.
Well, that's what they say. And that's why this has been such an emotional like turmoil for me because it was last April I tore the ACL and then June I got the surgery. And so in my mind I had like cuz doctors, therapists, people, are always like, "Oh, 6 to 9 months." A lot of athletes, you're so healthy and fit and strong, you'll probably be in that 6-month mark. So you like hope for that and you believe that and then when that 6-month mark comes, you're like, I'm so far behind. Like this isn't going to happen. And then and then the 9-month mark comes along and the same thing. And, like for people that like there's not just one type of ACL tear and like the recovery process is all the same or so basically, so I tore my ACL, my meniscus, ACL and meniscus, well, LCL, PCL, MCL, everything. But when they did the surgery, so the doctors talk about it, you can either have like a cadaver, which a lot of people reject. I know Dominic Cruz rejected a cadaver, or you can take from your patellar tendon or your hamstring. So usually you heal better with your own tissue. So I took from my hamstring, but then that kind of makes the process even harder, like the recovery time, because now I'm also recovering from almost like a hamstring surgery. And then they also there wasn't enough cartilage in my kneecap to like heal properly, so they drilled a hole in my shin, so they caused a fracture called a microfracture to like help facilitate blood to that area. And that's the part that's been giving me so many problems and so much pain, and the therapist can't tell me why. The doctor literally is like, when I go there and I tell him I'm having all this pain, he's like, "Oh, I don't know why." And so you feel like you can't get answers. And I thought I was going to be fighting around April, and I was having all these kinds of complications, but nobody could give me answers. So that's why I went to the UFC PI and the Performance Institute in Vegas, and all the therapists there are so awesome. And they're like, well, it could be fractured still because they had, your therapist had you running so quick, or it could be, like, I guess, and this is what it probably was nobody ever did any manual therapy on me. So they never like scraped out all the scar tissue or whatever. So having all that scar tissue, like, prevents like range of motion, like, being able to get into, full extension, being able to do certain exercises. So then you're never developing the muscle around the area, which causes all this other pain. And it's just been like a fiasco. And then after the Performance Institute, I came home and I felt like I was, getting better. And that was around the 9-month mark. And then I started and I was told, to try to ease into normal training, get back into regular training. So, you tell a fighter that, or an athlete, and you don't know because there's a fine line between what's too much and what's not enough. and you don't know. Everybody's telling you, oh, push yourself, make sure you stay on top of your therapy. So that's all I was doing constantly. And when I came home, I started doing a lot of, I found a new person to go to do active release therapy and stimulation, stim, and work out all the scar tissue, like the Performance Institute I've been doing. And I started doing jujitsu again, like once a day. I would also do some bike. I would do my, rehab stuff for my knee. I would be kicking the bag. So I ended up doing too much, and I got a bone contusion because I was having all this pain and I was limping and I could barely walk. So I know that was just a long story.
It's been a long story. Yeah. I mean, it's gone on for over a year now.
And I think that's been the hardest part because, okay, so once the injury happened, it was like, oh my gosh, this sucks. What am I going to do? And then you're waiting for surgery, and then you get the surgery and that sucks, but you're like, finally, I can start my road to recovery. And then you hit all these milestones really quickly, like in the beginning, because, getting a little bit of extension is like, oh, wow, I couldn't extend it that far, last week. So it like you progress fast and then you like plateau. And those are the times where you're like, oh, like it's hard to get motivated. And then, like I said, that 6 to 9 month mark in my mind, I was like, that's the longest this is going to take.
Mm-hmm.
6 to 9 months. So then when you're getting close to that 9 months and you're like, I don't feel anywhere near being ready to be able to fight, you just start getting like, am I ever going to get better? Am I ever going to fight again? I like in my mind, like that was like the 9 month mark was like the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. Okay, mm-hmm. I can start living my life again. I can start fighting again. I can start training hard. And I don't know, man, it's just been so emotional for me.
Yeah. And one of the things that, you and I talked about when we were in Vegas that I thought was interesting. And you're right, that not a lot of people think about this, and that like anybody could tear their ACL and it'd be super frustrating if it took longer than 6 to 9 months. Like even your common person, that would suck, but like for you guys, like this is your like identity and it's your job all tied into it. And it's like, it affects, I'm sure your conversations with sponsors that are, so not only you're not getting fight purses, but sponsors are talking to you about like, when are your next fight, and you can't tell them. And, you told me that there's also just this feeling of like concern over how you stay relevant when you can't get into competition. What's sort of that aspect and like where it's impacting kind of the other parts of your life?
That's been really hard because so I've been fighting for 17 years. So all my goals have always been, fighting. Like, I want to have about this many fights. When I want to travel, and I'm going to go do this. I'm going to go do, this. And, but everything revolves around fighting. And then now I can't even, and it's not even if you're not fighting. Sometimes you're like, I need a break. I'll take 6 months off. I'm just, not going to fight, but you still train. You still feel like a normal person and you can do your everyday things. And I'm, I see like constantly, I've been in the game for so long. So I see, my friends fighting like nonstop, and it's obviously I'm happy for them, but it's like, oh, you're fighting again. And you feel like, you keep watching all these fights go on. Like now there's fights, sometimes 3 times a week. So it's like always in your face, like, and you feel like the sport's passing you by. And it's like injuries aren't glamorous, nobody, it's like out of sight, out of mind. Oh, like, like they say, you're only as good as your last fight, or, people only remember your last fight. And when my last fight was like 2 years ago, it's like, well, how do I stay relevant? And it's not like I can still like go and travel and do all these, crazy things, because my main concern right now is I have to get my knee better. I have to stay home. I have to do all this therapy. I couldn't drive for like, was it like 16, like 3 months, maybe, this is like my driving leg. And then people always want to talk about the fights with you, or, hey, you want to go watch the fights? And it's like, you don't want to sound like a downer and be like, no, that like that depresses me to watch fights, but it does, because I know it sounds selfish, but it would be hard. It would be hard for anybody to not be selfish in this situation. I mean, you don't know what it's like until you're going through it, but even for sponsors, I'm like, what am I supposed to do for my sponsors? My life is so boring right now. It's like like even before, when you're like a professional fighter, you go to you have this like purpose that's so glamorous, and you feel good, and you can train, and you feel good after you train hard. And I can't, and that's your outlet. And it doesn't matter if all you do is eat, sleep, and train. Like, that's what you live for. And now it's like, I wake up every day and I have to do therapy, but it's not like, it's like training, but it's also like, you can't push yourself. You don't get that adrenaline rush. It's not like, okay, one more round and you can go home like this. I know you're tired, you can get through this. And so you don't have like the gym morale around you. It's just everything. It's like you feel alone, and you are alone. I have felt so alone, because it's like, even my friends, it's like most of my friends are fighters, so it's like a part, like I've tried to distance myself, but you can only keep hearing the same story over and over again, like, with, like, okay, it's okay, you're fighting, it's great, I'm happy for you. And because you are happy for them, but the selfish part of you is like, why not me? Like, why did this happen to me? Like, then obviously you can see how this is affecting me. It's like, and then like you try to stay positive, and like it's so exciting when you make like progress with the knee, and then I kept like feeling like I was progressing, and then it's like pushing yourself like too much and not knowing what's too much. Then it's like you regress, and it's just like, is this ever going to be like, is this my life? And what is it? Because it's like, I am identified as a fighter, but I'm not even fighting. So what am I? Who am I? I don't even know anymore. It's like, and that's what people care about. It's like, you're Felice the fighter. Like, that's all you are. And then you start feeling like, if that's all I am, like, now what am I? I'm nothing. I felt so small. Like I don't matter anymore. I did not want to get this emotional.
It's okay. I mean, we really appreciate your honesty. And I think that this is a side of fighting that you are not the only one to have felt this way. And you're not the only one to have gone through it. And I guess, is there any way to like change the sport or the landscape, or are there any safeguards to be put in place so that every time a fighter goes through an injury and maybe has a setback, that these types of feelings and that these types of hardships are at least lessened a little bit? Like, is there any kind of solution to this?
I mean, I think over time, as the sport grows, things will change. Even at the Performance Institute, they're talking about getting like a sports therapist, like, which will be great, which I've actually recommended to them and reached out to them about. But it's also hard because it's like, it's financially, like, it's like, I'm so scared to lose my sponsors, but it's also hard to keep sponsors happy, because it's like, now I'm towards the end of the injury, but I've been so limited as to what I can do. It's like, well, I'm in this full leg knee brace for like 3 months, and you're so inactive in your life, and I'm lucky that I still have a lot of sponsors, so that I'm, able to support myself. But I don't know if you don't fight, you don't get paid. And it's not like, like some of the other sports teams where, if you're, in the NFL and you're part of, I'm in the Patriots, if I get injured, I'm benched for the season, and that really sucks. I don't get to play football, but I still get paid. So it's like, not only am I not, able to train in my sport, I'm not able to fight, compete in my sport, and I'm not getting paid. And people care about you when, like, even like I've barely done any interviews, no one's asked me to do interviews, because it's like, when you do interviews, it's usually like, oh, let's talk about your next fight. Like, people want to, like, it's always the next thing. I don't, what was the question? Like, how can, like, how can people not feel this way if something like this happens?
Is there anything the UFC could do? Is there anything that, like, management could do? Are there things that, and I mean, this kind of also bleeds into the other question of, what do fighters do when they're done? What do they do when they retire? I mean, are there answers to those questions, or is this just kind of risks that are associated with this profession?
Yeah, again, I think over time, because if you really think about it, MMA is still in its infancy. We've seen it grow so much over the years. It's been like maybe 7 years now since women have ever even been in the UFC. I think somebody who's important has to care enough to it, like, every business, a lot of businesses are cutthroat. So it's like, oh, you're washed up, you're done, we don't care about you anymore. So it's like, what's the difference, like, when you're injured? I'm sure there's things that could be done, but nobody's cares enough or has thought enough to put anything into place. Somebody like Dana White could, he's so busy doing other things. It's like, is an injured fighter, like, do they matter? No different than, like, if you fight and you lose, 2 fights, or you're cut, it's like, sorry, it's just business, I'm sure things, the Performance Institute is doing great. I know that those guys over there, I mean, I love all those guys. They really care about the athletes. That's the one thing I noticed being there, is like, everybody, like, really cares about the athlete. And I know that they're trying to, put things into place with like a therapist or whatever, but it's not even just about talking to somebody, it's about, like me. And then, I was like, well, now that I'm a little bit better, maybe I can start doing more appearances or whatever. And now, this whole, now everybody's quarantined. So
yeah, bad timing on that. Have you been able to, like, still come through for your sponsors? Like, how have they been in terms of, like, hey, I can't post from a fight week, but like, how kind of, like, creative things have you had to do to continue those relationships?
I think with a lot of my sponsors, I've always, like, they've let me kind of just be genuine and more organic in in what I do. In the beginning, after the injury, everything felt forced, because I'm on painkillers. I'm, like, laying there. I'm, like, all, like, ugh, like, I got to keep my sponsors happy. And I've lost some, but I've kept some. I've kept the bulk of them. But then, even I recently just lost, like, one of my biggest sponsors, because all the conventions, because of the coronavirus thing, like,
Right.
people, supplement companies, or, clothing brands or whatever, like, a lot who've spent money on going to, like, I know, like, the Arnold Classic was canceled. I think, like, FIBA was probably canceled, so I did everything to keep them happy, but I lost them because they're like, we've been losing so much money because, we can't, these conventions that were canceled.
Yeah.
So, but now, I do what I can. Like, I've done what I can. And if I've lost sponsors, like, because I didn't do a good enough job because, I'm injured, like, but no, nobody really, and that's the thing too. You feel like you don't want to talk. You don't want to bring attention to, like, oh, I'm injured. Why are you paying me to, like, promote you? And, you know, you almost feel like you're not worthy of, like, getting, I've felt so irrelevant. So I'm like, how am I going to keep these sponsors happy? How are they going to feel like I'm irrelevant? They're probably thinking I'm so irrelevant. They're probably like, oh my God, like, why are we paying you when we can pay this fighter, and those are the things that go on in your head.
Yeah. I bet that's hard to combat, but I mean, you have to remind yourself that you're still very relevant. I mean, injured fighters are still relevant. And, I mean, obviously being active and being on fight cards you can't replace that. But
Yeah.
I told you this in Vegas. I mean, I think when you do come back, I think the UFC is going to put you on a main card. I'd be surprised to see you being the first person that walks out on a fight card. So,
Yeah, I don't think that's ever happened to me.
yeah, I don't think it will. Now at this stage in your career. So to turn things, a little bit more looking forward. When do you think? And I mean, right now everything's up in the air, right? Because there's not even events going on regularly. But when do you think is realistic now? Like, what is your goal in terms of coming back? And what are you looking for at this stage in your career?
I'm still very close to being not injured anymore. I did, because I was having so much pain and complications, I got an updated MRI, and we found out that I had a deep bone contusion and just a lot of edema. But they said that the LCL is LCL, the meniscus is intact, the ACL is intact, like the graft's intact, like everything structurally is great. So now it's just like continuing to push through a little bit of pain and discomfort and keep, doing as much as I can. But my goal has always been to fight 2 times this year. That's still the goal. And I think it's realistic. Like, now with how I feel right now, I'm hoping that, surgery was in June. Hopefully June, I'll be feeling like really, really, really good again.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's been difficult because I've been doing everything that I've needed to do, so I, like, have these goals in my mind that I think are so attainable. So then when I get to that point, I'm like, but why? Like, what did I do wrong? And even talking to, like, the therapist and people at the PI, a lot of it is, a microfracture is a big deal. Like, a lot of, and my doctor didn't, like, consult me about that. Like, usually, like, you talk to, your doctors, you weigh up pros and cons. Like, we weighed out, like, the pros and cons for the cadaver versus the hamstring. And, we decided on the hamstring, but wasn't given the option, like, microfracture or not microfracture. And that's the thing too. Like, when you, like, normal ACL tears are 6 to 9 months. That's just like, you tore your ACL, we're fixing it. But I also had meniscus, the hamstring, and the microfracture. So it's just caused a lot. It's just been I've had to work a lot harder to get back.
Yeah.
But what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
There's a light at the end of the tunnel always. I don't think this is going to be the end of your career. So, hey, before I let you go, I feel bad, that this has turned into just but I'm appreciative of it. I really do. I love the honesty and the openness that you have on this. So give me a good story. What is your favorite moment of your entire career? Like you said, you've been fighting over 10 years. You're a pioneer.
17, not 10, 17.
Well, I said over 10, but yes, 17,
over 10,
17,
but under
17 years. Lots of memories. I mean, you've seen the sport grow up in some sense. I mean, what can you tell us? Some stories that we haven't heard of, maybe of the old days.
The old days? Oh gosh. Oh, so back in the day, you had, like, so now, like, when we, so women, people probably don't know, like, women, we get pregnancy tests. Like, if we're, you can't fight if you're pregnant. So now, they'll do, the UFC will, we'll do blood work, but they used to literally like hand you a stick like to pee on at weigh-ins. And weigh-ins weren't always in the morning. A lot of times, like the athletic commission used to like make you wait like hours. Like it's like weigh-ins are at 6. We got all these hungry, thirsty fighters. Let's just show up at 8 and then have them fill out their paperwork before they get on the scale. So I took a pregnancy test, and not to be gross, but I was on my period and hadn't had sex and whatever. And so it came up as like positive. And I was like, oh, I'm not pregnant. And then they ran out and they got another test, and it came back as inconclusive. And then they had to go out and get another one. So it was like 3 pregnancy tests later. It's like, oh, you're not pregnant. But I don't know why that was the first thing that popped up in my head. I think
unique. It's definitely unique. I mean, I've been covering the sport for 10 years. I don't think I've heard that story before.
I don't know why I decided it. And I think, there's been a few times that people have been pregnant and they couldn't fight. I don't know, like things have changed so much now. I'm trying to think of, I did have a story about Dominic Reyes. I think you just had him on. So,
we talked to Dominic earlier today. Yeah.
Did he know? Yeah. I don't know if it's that good. It's either one of those, like you had to be there, or maybe I just thought it was funny. So this was before, now Dominic is like, he built, he climbed up the ladder. So this is when he was still climbing up the ladder, and we were on the same fight card, and we were sitting next to each other at weigh-ins. We were talking, it was like right after weigh-ins, and we were talking and whatever. And Amber, who hands out the tickets, was, she like, cause as fighters, we get, tickets for friends, family, whatever. And she's handing out the tickets, and she's like, oh, Felice, she's like, Felice. And, she gives me my tickets, and she looks right at him, and he goes to me, he goes, she doesn't know my name. And I was like, I bet you she's going to go around to everyone, and yours is going to be the last one. And then she's going to be like, oh, Dominic. And she literally was like, she looks at him and she's like, oh, Dominic, I didn't see you there next to Felice. And he looks at me like, I don't know. I thought it was funny, but it could just be me.
I think if you're Heather, you just got to be like, I'm sorry, baby. What's your name? Who are you? I didn't get any sleep last night. You can easily make an excuse or something, right?
But that was what we were like joking about, is that like she didn't say anything, but she like, we clearly knew like she didn't know who he was.
She was trying to be nice, but she made it more awkward. It happens. I do that all the time.
Yeah. I still don't know people's names all the time. And a lot of times I meet them, and I've met them, and I'm like, oh, nice to meet you. They're like, we've met before 3 times. I'm like, oh, shit, I'm sorry. A lot of people.
It does.
You owe me for making me cry this whole interview.
I got you. Yeah, we'll figure something out. But we really appreciate your story. And I think it's an important one because, like you said, so many times fighters get injured. I mean, I can think of a lot of different examples of guys that get injured, and then we hear they're still injured, and we never hear any updates from them. And if we do, it's like, I'm still doing rehab, and we really like, it's just such surface level, we're like, okay, they can't fight. And that's really the only thing that matters. And your struggles behind the scenes is like part of your story, and it makes when you do come back, the story much more interesting. So thanks for sharing it with us.
You're welcome, everyone, for sharing. Thank you for interviewing me. I know you made me feel relevant.
You are relevant, Felice. We appreciate the time. Say goodbye to Quinn. It was nice meeting him.
Yeah, she's a girl.
I'm sorry. Nice meeting Quinn, the girl. And keep drawing and posting that stuff on Instagram. That stuff's good.
Yeah, I'm just going to show everyone. This is the last one I did. It's a jalapeno pepper.
It's always food. Always food.
No, not always. I'm doing a series. Like I started with a donut and doing a thumbs up. Well, I gave him feet. I just wanted to draw a donut, and I added feet and like a thumbs up. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to do a series of like all food with a hand gesture and feet, and only one arm. Everybody's calling them the amputee fruit or the amputee food. So
I'm loving them. One drawing is one thing that like I absolutely cannot do. So I appreciate good artists.
Cool. All right. All right. Well, my
All right,
parents are
Felice.
here. We're going to do some
Yep.
art together. So,
All right. Go have fun with your parents. Thank you for talking
okay.
to us.
You're welcome. Bye.